Most people talk about their dreams more than they work for them. They announce their goals, they share their plans, they explain what they want to become. But when it comes to the quiet hours, when no one is watching, very few actually put in the work. Real progress doesn't make noise. It doesn't need an audience. It happens in silence when you are tired but still choose to continue. It happens when there is no applause, no validation, no instant reward, just discipline. If you look closely at anyone who has achieved something meaningful, you will notice one thing. They didn't spend their time explaining their journey. They spent it building it. While others were busy talking, they were practicing. While others were distracted, they were focused. While others were seeking attention, they were seeking improvement. Working in silence is not about hiding your goals. It's about protecting your energy. The more you talk, the more you feel like you've already done something. But success doesn't come from words. It comes from consistency in actions that no one sees. There will be days when motivation disappears. Days when nothing feels exciting anymore. Days when quitting looks easier than continuing. Those are the exact days that separate those who want success from those who create it. Silence builds strength. It removes pressure. It keeps you away from distractions and opinions that slow you down. Not everyone deserves access to your process. Not everyone will understand your pace. And that's fine. Because the truth is, you don't need everyone to believe in you. You need to keep showing up for yourself when no one else does. Stay consistent when it's boring. Stay disciplined when it's hard. Stay focused when it feels like nothing is happening. Growth is not always visible in the moment, but is always happening beneath the surface. And one day, without announcing it, without needing to prove anything, your results will speak so loudly that they will silence every doubt that once surrounded you. So work quietly, move smart, stay focused, and let success make the noise for you. Real success is built quietly, far away from attention, recognition, and external validation. It does not begin with announcements or declarations made to the world. It begins in moments that no one notices, where effort is given without expectation of applause. The foundation of real achievement is often invisible at the start because it is formed in repetition, discipline, and patience rather than public display. When someone constantly talks about what they're going to achieve, they often feel a temporary satisfaction that replaces the hunger required to actually do the work. But true progress demands something deeper than words. It demands consistency when there's no audience and commitment when there's no immediate reward. Silence becomes a powerful environment for growth because it removes unnecessary pressure and distraction. When you are not focused on explaining your journey to others, you gain more energy to actually walk it. Many people lose momentum because they spend too much time seeking approval or validation from those around them. They share plans too early, and in doing so, they emotionally convince themselves that speaking is a form of progress. But reality does not change through conversation. It changes through action repeated over time, especially during moments when motivation fades and only discipline remains. With silence, effort becomes honest. There's no exaggeration, no comparison, and no need to appear better than you are. You confront your weaknesses directly because there is no audience to impress. This honesty is what allows real improvement. Growth requires recognizing where you are lacking and working on it repeatedly without distraction. When no one is watching, there is no temptation to perform for others, only the responsibility to improve for yourself. That is where real transformation begins. Most people underestimate the power of unseen work. They assume that if something is not visible, it is not valuable. But every strong result has a hidden process behind it. Skills are built in quiet practice. Confidence is built through private struggle. Strength is built in moments when quitting would be easier, but continuing is chosen instead. These private moments accumulate, and over time they shape outcomes that appear sudden to outsiders, but were actually slow and consistent from the inside. Working in silence also protects your energy. Wow. The more you share your goals publicly, the more you expose yourself to opinions, doubts, and unnecessary pressure. Not everyone will understand your vision, and not everyone needs to. When you keep your focus inward, you reduce noise and increase clarity. Your attention stays on improvement rather than explanation. This makes your path more stable and less influenced by external judgment. There is also a psychological strength developed through silent work. When you are used to working without recognition, you stop depending on it. You become self-driven instead, externally driven. This is a powerful shift because external motivation always fades, but internal discipline can last much longer. You stop needing encouragement to act. You stop waiting for perfect conditions. You simply continue because you have trained yourself to move regardless of circumstances. Silence also teaches patience. Real progress is rarely fast, and when you are not constantly sharing your journey, you are less likely to feel frustrated by comparison. You are not measuring your timeline against others. Instead, you are focused on your own steady improvement. This creates emotional stability, which is essential for long-term success. Without patience, most people quit just before results begin to show. But those who stay quiet often stay consistent longer because they are not distracted by external timelines. Eventually, silent effort creates visible results. When those results appear, they carry more weight because they were not announced beforehand. They speak for themselves. At that point, success does not need explanation or justification. It becomes undeniable proof of sustained discipline. What once was invisible becomes obvious, and what once required patience becomes reward. That is the nature of real achievement. It does not rely on noise. It does not depend on attention. It is built in the background, shaped by consistency, and revealed only when it is strong enough to stand on its own. Talking too much about goals can slowly reduce the inner pressure that is needed to actually achieve them. When a person constantly speaks about what they want to do, the mind often begins to feel a sense of completion before any real action taking place. Creates an illusion that progress is happening simply because it has been expressed in words. This small psychological effect can weaken urgency because the emotional satisfaction of sharing replaces the discomfort that usually pushes someone to work harder. Goals are meant to create direction and discipline, but when they are repeatedly spoken aloud without action, they can lose their intensity. The mind starts to feel like the job has already been partially done just by talking about it. This is where many people unintentionally slow themselves down. Instead of using their energy to build, they use it to explain. Instead of proving progress through effort, they feel temporary relief through conversation. That relief may feel harmless in the moment, but over time, it reduces the drive that fuels consistent work. Right? Another issue with talking too much about goals is that it exposes your intentions to external opinions. Not everyone will respond with support or encouragement. Some people will doubt, some will criticize, and some will simply not understand your vision. Even subtle reactions can affect focus more than people realize. Once outside opinions enter your mind, they begin to influence how you feel about your own goals. You may start adjusting your confidence based on how others react instead of relying on your own commitment. This weakens internal clarity. When goals are kept private, they remain protected. There is less interference from outside voices and less emotional dependency on approval. This allows a person to focus entirely on execution rather than explanation. The energy that would normally be spent discussing progress can instead be used to actually create it. This shift may seem small, but over time it makes a significant difference in output and consistency. Talking too much also creates pressure to perform in front of others. Once you have told people what you plan to do, there is a subtle expectation to deliver results quickly. If progress is slow, it can create embarrassment or frustration, which may lead to stress. Instead of focusing calmly on improvement, the mind becomes concerned with how things appear externally. This shift in focus can interrupt the natural learning process, which requires patience and repetition. In contrast, silence removes that unnecessary pressure. When no one is waiting for updates, you are free to move at your own pace. You can make mistakes, learn from them, improve without feeling judged. This freedom allows deeper focus. Progress becomes more authentic because it is not influenced by the need to impress others. It is guided purely by personal discipline and long-term vision. There is also a tendency for people to feel satisfied after discussing their goals repeatedly. Each time they talk about what they will do, The brain releases a small sense of accomplishment even though nothing has been done yet. This creates a false feeling of progress. Over time, this can reduce urgency. The mind begins to believe that thinking and speaking are part of doing, when in reality they are separate from execution. Real progress only happens through action repeated over time. Those who achieve meaningful results often limit how much they speak about their goals. They understand that energy is limited and should be directed toward building rather than explaining. Instead of discussing every step, they focus on taking steps. Instead of seeking validation through conversation, they seek improvement through effort. This quiet approach helps maintain focus and prevents unnecessary emotional distraction. Another important factor is consistency. And when goals are kept private, there is less temptation to switch focus based on feedback from others. People are less likely to abandon their path just because someone questions it. Silence creates stability. It keeps the mind anchored to personal purpose rather than external influence. This stability is essential for long-term success because meaningful results rarely come quickly. In the end, speaking less and doing more creates a stronger connection between intention and action. Goals become something to be worked on instead of something to be talked about. The less energy wasted on words, the more energy remains for execution. And over time, it is not the loud plans that matter, but the quiet discipline that turns those plans into reality. Discipline in private is what truly defines long-term success, because it is the part of the journey that no one sees, no one applauds, and no one rewards immediately. Motivation can start a process, but it cannot sustain it. Discipline is what continues the process when motivation disappears. It is the ability to act consistently, even when there is no emotional drive, no excitement, and no external encouragement. In private moments, when there's no pressure to perform for others, discipline reveals its true strength. Most people can act when they feel inspired. It is easy to work hard when energy is high or when results are visible, but real life is not always inspiring. There are long periods where progress feels slow, repetitive, and even discouraging. In those moments, discipline becomes the only thing that keeps a person moving forward. It is not based on feeling, it is based on commitment. That is why private discipline is far more powerful than public motivation. Public motivation fades quickly, but private discipline builds consistency over time. When no one is watching, choices become more honest. There is no audience to impress and no expectation to meet. This is where true character is built. A person can appear hardworking in front of others, but their real progress is determined by what they do when they are alone. Private discipline means showing up even when there is no reward attached to the moment. It means practicing when no one will know, studying when no one will check, and improving when there is no immediate benefit. These unseen actions accumulate silently and create visible results later. One of the biggest challenges in any journey is resisting the temptation to take shortcuts when no one is watching. Without discipline, it becomes easy to delay work, reduce effort, or convince yourself that a one day off would not matter. But small compromises in private often turn into habits that slow down progress. Discipline prevents this decline. It enforces standards even in isolation. It ensures that effort does not depend on supervision or recognition. Private discipline also builds self-respect. When a person consistently keeps promises to themselves, they begin to trust their own actions. This internal trust is more important than external validation. It creates confidence that does not depend on others' opinions. Each time you choose discipline over comfort in private, you strengthen your identity as someone who follows through. Over time, this identity becomes stable and reliable. There is also a deep connection between discipline and long-term growth. Real improvement requires repetition. Skills are not built in a single moment. They are built through continuous practice. In private, this repetition becomes possible without distraction. There is no need to perform, only to improve. Whether it is learning, training, or building something, private discipline ensures that effort is consistent even when progress feels slow. Many people underestimate how much is built in silence. They only notice the final outcome and assume it appeared suddenly. But behind every visible achievement is a long period of invisible effort. Private discipline is responsible for that hidden phase. It is what turns intention into habit and habit into mastery. Without it, goals remain ideas. With it, ideas turn into results. Another important aspect is emotional control. In private, there are no external pressures to push you, so you must learn to push yourself. This develops resilience. You begin to understand that emotions are temporary, but actions have long-term consequences. Instead of reacting to how you feel in the moment, you learn to act based on what you want in the future. This shift is essential for growth. Private discipline also protects focus. When you are not trying to show others what you are doing, your attention remains fully on the task itself. There is no need to document every step or seek approval. This allows deeper concentration. Work becomes more efficient because energy is not divided between doing and displaying. The result is more meaningful progress in less time. Over time, discipline in private creates visible strength in public. What others see as talent or sudden success is actually the result of long hours of unseen effort. The difference between those who succeed and those who struggle is often not ability, but consistency in private moments. Those who remain disciplined when no one is watching eventually reach a level where their results speak for themselves. Consistent action, especially when no one is watching, is the real foundation of long-term success because it removes the influence of emotion, attention, and external pressure from the process of growth. Many people are able to act in bursts. They work hard when they feel motivated, when they are inspired by something, or when they know others are observing them. But bursts of effort are not enough to create meaningful results. What truly builds progress is the ability to keep moving even when nothing feels exciting, when there's no audience, and when the outcome is not immediately visible. When a person takes action in private, there's no performance involved. There's no need to impress, explain, or justify anything. This creates a pure environment where effort becomes honest and focused. In such moments, the only thing that matters is whether the work is being done or not. This simplicity is powerful because it removes distractions that often come from external validation. Without an audience, there is no temptation to slow down for approval or speed up for recognition. The pace becomes steady, and steady progress is far more reliable than unpredictable bursts. Consistency in unseen moments also builds discipline at a deeper level. It trains the mind to act based on commitment rather than mood. If action depends on feeling good, then progress will always be unstable because feelings constantly change. But when action becomes a habit that continues regardless of emotional state, it creates stability. This stability is what allows long-term goals to actually be achieved. Over time, repetition in private turns effort into identity. A person no longer just tries to work hard. They become someone who works hard naturally. Another important aspect of consistent action is that it compounds silently. Small efforts may not appear significant on a daily basis, but when repeated over weeks, months, and years, they create noticeable transformation. The problem is that most people expect immediate results, and when they do not see them, they lose patience. However, growth is rarely visible in the beginning. It builds beneath the surface. Like layers being added one by one, progress accumulates quiet until it eventually becomes obvious. Working consistently when no one is watching also strengthens resilience. There will always be days when energy is low, when motivation disappears, or when doubt appears. On those days, the decision to continue becomes more important than the quality of effort. Even imperfect action keeps momentum alive. Stopping completely, on the other hand, breaks the rhythm and makes it harder to restart. Consistency ensures that momentum is never fully lost, even during difficult periods. Private consistency also develops self-trust. Every time a person follows through on what they said they would do, even in isolation, they reinforce belief in their own reliability. This internal trust becomes extremely important over time because it reduces dependence on external encouragement. Instead of needing others to remind or motivate them, they begin to rely on their own commitment. This independence is what allows long-term discipline to grow stronger. There is also a hidden advantage in working consistently without attention: freedom from comparison. When actions are not constantly shared or displayed, there is less temptation to compare progress with others. Comparison often leads to unnecessary stress, impatience, or distraction. But when focus remains internal, progress is measured only against personal growth. This makes the journey more stable and less emotionally reactive. Consistency in silence also helps maintain clarity. Without external noise, it becomes easier to identify what actually needs improvement. Attention is not scattered across opinions or reactions. Instead, it remains focused on execution and refinement. This clarity improves decision-making and reduces confusion, allowing progress to remain aligned with long-term goals. Another important truth is that visible success is usually the result of invisible repetition. What people see as sudden achievement is often the outcome of countless private actions that were repeated without recognition. Practice, learning, failure, correction, and improvement all happen quietly before results become visible. Without consistent action during this hidden phase, there's nothing meaningful to show later. Over time, consistent effort in private shapes character. It builds patience, focus, and endurance. It teaches that progress is not about intensity in short moments, but about reliability over long periods and long periods. When consistency becomes a habit, success is no longer dependent on external conditions. It becomes a natural outcome of repeated effort. Eventually, what was once invisible becomes undeniable. The actions that were taken quietly begin to reflect in results that speak clearly. And at that point, it becomes obvious that consistency in unseen moments was the real force behind everything achieved. Distractions and outside opinions are two of the biggest silent forces that slow down progress, often without a person even realizing how much influence they are having. When attention is constantly pulled in different directions by what others think, say, or expect, it becomes difficult to stay fully committed to personal goals. Every opinion that enters the mind creates a small shift in focus. Even if it seems harmless, it gradually builds mental noise that weakens clarity and reduces the ability to concentrate deeply on what truly matters. Distractions do not always appear in obvious forms. The mind becomes more organized, and decisions become more intentional. Clarity is not just about having ideas. It is about removing unnecessary noise so the important ones can stand out. When outside opinions are minimized, a person becomes more self-reliant. They begin to trust their own judgment instead of constantly seeking approval or validation. This independence is important because every meaningful journey requires decisions that others may not always understand. If someone relies too heavily on external approval, they may hesitate to take necessary steps simply because those steps are not widely accepted or understood. Distractions also affect long-term discipline. Every time attention is pulled away from important work, it becomes harder to maintain momentum. Discipline is built through repetition, and repetition requires focus. When focus is broken frequently, the habit of consistency becomes weaker. Over time, this can slow down progress significantly, even if the person has strong intentions. Another important point is that outside opinions often reflect someone else's limitation, not your potential. People tend to give advice based on what they know, not necessarily what is possible for you. If these opinions are taken too seriously, they can create invisible boundaries that limit thinking. This is why protecting your mental environment is important. Not every opinion needs to be accepted, and not every distraction deserves attention. Reducing distractions does not mean ignoring the world completely. It means becoming selective with what you allow into your focus. When attention is directed carefully, energy becomes more powerful. Instead of being scattered across many things, it becomes concentrated on fewer, more meaningful action. This concentration is what leads to deeper progress and better results. In the end, protecting your focus from distractions and outside opinions is about maintaining control over your own direction. When the mind is less influenced by external noise, it becomes stronger, clearer, and more consistent. And with that clarity, progress becomes more stable, purposeful, and aligned with long-term goals. Real success eventually speaks for itself, and when it does, it removes the need for explanations, arguments, or justifications. The outcome of consistent effort becomes the clearest form of communication, far more powerful than anything that could have been said earlier. Words can only describe intention, but results demonstrate reality. When progress finally becomes visible, it carries the weight of every unseen effort that was put into it. At that point, there is no need to convince anyone, because evidence becomes undeniable. In the beginning, people often feel the need to explain what they are trying to achieve. They may talk about their plans, their goals, or their vision in an attempt to gain understanding or support. But as time passes and real work is done, explanations become less important. The focus shifts from what is being said to what is being built. Actions slowly start replacing words, and when results start appearing, they naturally take over the conversation. Success that is built quietly has a different kind of strength. It does not rely on early validation or approval. Instead, it develops through repetition, patience, and consistency. Because of this, when it finally becomes visible, it feels solid and undeniable. People may not have seen the process, but they can clearly see the outcome. And outcomes are harder to question than intentions. There's also a powerful psychological shift that happens when results begin to speak. Before success, a person may feel pressure to explain themselves or defend their choices. But after consistent effort starts showing results, that pressure disappears. The need for approval reduces because reality itself becomes proof. This creates a sense of confidence that is no longer dependent on opinions or reactions from others. Another important aspect is that results carry authority. Anyone can speak about what they plan to do, but only results show what has actually been done. This difference is what separates intention from achievement. When success becomes visible, it naturally earns respect without needing to ask for it. The work itself becomes the message, and that message is clear enough on its own. What makes results powerful is that they are built over time in silence. While others may only notice the final stage, the foundation is formed through countless small actions that were repeated consistently. Practice, effort, discipline, and persistence all contribute to the final outcome. Because these elements are usually hidden, the result appears even more impactful when it finally arrives. It feels sudden to outsiders, but in reality, is the product of long-term dedication. When success begins to speak, it also changes perception. People who once doubted or ignored the effort start to recognize its value. However, by that time, the focus of the person who achieved it is no longer on proving anything. Their attention has already moved beyond validation. They understand that the real reward was not attention, but the discipline that created the result in the first place. There's also a sense of stability that comes with results speaking for themselves. Unlike words, which can be forgotten or ignored, results remain visible. They continue to exist as proof of effort long after the work has been done. This permanence gives them strength. It ensures that success is not temporary in perception, but lasting in impact. Another important truth is that when results become the voice, unnecessary noise fades away. There is less need to explain struggles, challenges, or processes because the outcome itself tells the story. This simplicity is powerful. It removes confusion and replaces it with clarity. People no longer need detailed explanations to understand the journey. They can simply observe the result. Over time, this creates a shift in identity. A person is no longer defined by what they say they will do, but by what they consistently achieve. Their actions build credibility, their results build reputation, and their silence during the process makes the final outcome even more meaningful. Eventually, success becomes self-explanatory. It no longer requires defense or valid tone, supported by evidence rather than words. And in that moment, everything that was once hidden in effort becomes visible in achievement. The journey that was quiet from the outside becomes loud through results, and that is where real impact is made. In the end, real success does not need to be announced or explained because it naturally becomes visible through results. What once required effort, patience, and silence eventually turns into proof that speaks louder than words ever could. Every small action, every unseen struggle, and every consistent effort comes together to form outcomes that cannot be ignored. At that point, there is no need to convince anyone or defend the journey because the results themselves carry the story. Success becomes its own language, clear and undeniable, and it quietly reflects the discipline that built it.